Welcome to Melanated and Spiritually Woke. I'm your host, Adorable Earth Angel. I'm a holistic wellness educator of 12 years with a master's in public health, energy healing of 7 years, and have been a Black female spiritual alchemist my whole life. Each week, we'll be sharing uplifting, spiritually focused wellness practices to best support you in regaining your personal power, or we'll have special guest interviews with the same intention. This show is in service to all those listening, and especially for folks of color who are seeking information to support their physical, mental, and emotional spiritual awakening. These practices will help you live your best life.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Very special guest this week. I have the lovely Tamu Mosley on our show. I've known this soul sister for a couple of years now, and I first met her while expanding my spirituality and kind of opening up to healing and ceremony work, and have really come to think of her as a really big uplifter in my community. And found out later that Tamu is actually an amazing medicine woman, the founder of Holistic Shine, and thought that she would just, like, viewers and listeners would love to hear her perspective on holistic lifestyle and what that means. And so welcome on the show, Tamu. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. So blessed to be here.
Oh my gosh, so wonderful to have you here. You're just, you've been on, it's so interesting. You've been on a very incredible journey. You yourself have kind of been in a space where you decided many years ago, and it really wasn't popular, to kind of take up a holistic lifestyle.
Oh yeah.
Could you kind of speak to, I mean, I was reading over your bio, like you started this in 1995, which is like unheard of for most people to
Yes.
kind of take up a holistic path. Could you kind of speak to, yeah, just tell us about who you are and like this holistic path that you started.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned the 90s. I know we've come so far from that in terms of health and wellness. But I guess it was in 95, I met my my two adult children who are 20 and 22. I met their father, who was a vegan and kind of living more naturally in terms of being more mindful about the products that he used, in his home and on his body and the way that he ate. And so he kind of opened up, or further expanded, because I was already kind of playing with back and forth through college with various, holistic ways. And he opened and expanded that and really brought the vegan food into my world. And actually, I've danced with the reason why I became more plant-based. And I say I'm on a vegan journey because within the last 20, how many years has it been? 25 years or so. I've definitely danced in and out of being fully plant-based, eating eggs and cheese occasionally. And I think I went through a period of eating fish and even chicken. So it's kind of been a journey, but I always kind of rest back into the plant-based. But yeah, he opened up that world and just showed me ways to eat. He actually did most of the cooking when we were together, raising our two children in their very early part of their life. And when we parted ways, I had to learn to cook for myself. And now I just consider myself a kitchen alchemist in the plant-based food world. But at the time he cooked, I washed the dishes. That was our deal. But yeah, the shift was really just looking at the Black community and all of the various diseases and health conditions that are still rampant in the Black community that can definitely be shifted, if not reversed, by a healthy eating, by healthy eating, mindful eating, plant-based eating. So that was my initial focus. And it wasn't so much, animal rights, although now it has become a more holistic practice in terms of just sustainability, the impact on the planet, the lives of all the creatures that are affected by mass consumption of meat and dairy. And so, yeah, definitely took an evolution there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I know today it seems like it's more easier to be vegan. Like there's just a lot more
Yeah.
like products, like vegan processed
Yeah.
products or plant-based cheeses. And back then in like 25 years ago, like it must have been the wild, wild west.
Yeah, I mean, we were eating and really similar to the way that I eat today. Um, there weren't a lot of products, but there are whole foods, whole food ingredients that don't require, a vegan stamp on it. Beans, rice, lentils, all the various grains, all the fruits and veggies, all the nuts and seeds. They've always, for the most part, been available. But of course, we did want to go out and treat ourselves. So the one place that was around then was the herbivore, and it was the only herbivore that was open at the time was the one in San Francisco on Valencia Street. And I think they've since closed, but we would go there on birthdays and other celebratory things to have a vegan eating out experience. But now, of course, there's so many, and then Ethiopian food and other Thai foods. You can always, lean towards veganism. But yeah, I definitely, that was one layer of the holistic journey. And then when I think it was right around age 30, I did my first cleanse, like a juice detox, where I was juicing and taking in all these herbs for 21 days. And I started to kind of look at wellness differently, from more the seasonal cleansing perspective. And then that grew into, trying various cleanses. And then the one that I did rest on is doing a 21-day raw food cleanse. The juicing and teas and things are amazing and wonderful, but it wasn't very sustainable, and also felt like it put my body through the ringer every time. And the raw food became, oh, okay, I'm being more gentle with myself as I got older. I was like, I don't need to torture myself with, a super intense intestinal cleanse, for example. Yeah.
And so I'm hearing like like beyond just kind of having a more kind of healthier plant-based diet, you then also noticed the need to do like periodic cleanses, like the 21-day detox.
Yeah.
And then something morphed in 2014 for you. Something kind of got birthed. Do you kind of want to talk about where things went?
Well, 2014 actually was 2011. I don't know if, I'm not sure what birthing you're referring to, but
Holistic shine.
Yeah. Oh, yes. But in 2011, let me just say, veganism and plant-based diet is amazing, and it's not for everyone. And what I've learned on this journey is that there's not any one way to kind of be healthy. And just because you're a vegan does not mean you're healthy. And you could eat a lot of, starchy foods, fatty foods, fried foods, not a lot of fresh living plants and vegetables, food that's made by someone else, not at home. You never quite know, what's in there, what other things are added. sodium levels, all sorts of things, you know, the freshest, highest quality of the food. So, yeah, in 2011, I was treated for stage 0 cervical cancer. And that was the early part of 2011. And that inspired me to I went to my friend who wrote a little guide called My Raw Life. And I read her guide and I said, hey, think I'm going to jump on this journey for 21 days just to give my body a reset after being treated for the carcinoma that was on my cervix. And I ate raw based on her guide. It was really simple and clear. It wasn't these big to do around raw food alchemy. It was really simple, and I just kept it really simple. And 21 days came, and 30 days, and 50, and 60, and 70, and 80. And I ended up eating raw for 90 days. And I always think back, like, what inspired that? And then I remember, oh yeah, I was treated for this cancer. And that kind of inspired me to dive on that journey and just see it through. And I also just saw layers peeling away and unfolding, and way bigger than the food, just awakening myself in such a clear way that it became clear that I need to stay with the raw food for the 90 days. And then I started eating cooked food again, and kind of danced back and forth with that, and continue to over the years. But then in that process of doing that, I started inviting people to join in a 21-day detox. And I wrote a detox guide and welcomed in participants to come on that journey with me. And then from there, Holistic Shine was birthed a few years later, when people kept asking, well, where's your website? Where can I go to get this information? And I was just like, it's kind of like grassrootsy right now. And I don't have a website, and I don't have a business card. And I still keep it that way for the most part, but I do have a website, and I have lots of amazing raw food recipes, and a lot of great interviews with people about kind of their holistic lifestyle and things like that. Yeah.
Wow, Tamu. I mean, I don't know if I had an idea about what your health journey has entailed, like, and just the level of trust that you put into yourself and knowing what your body needed to heal itself is really actually super powerful and inspiring. That's kind of the birth of this bigger journey of you being able to then invite people and to guide them and support them from a place of like overcoming a big health crisis, and kind of like that's really powerful to hear that, because I think there are people listening who may be in a health crisis right now. We are recording this in the times of COVID-19. We're recording this in the times where we have the highest rates of obesity, the highest rates of cancers of all types. And the idea that food can be medicine, and that food can give us like just a sense of hope and our ability to do something, that we have that within ourselves, the ability to kind of shift our health based on food, I think is really huge.
Well, I just want to add, at the close of that 90 days, I felt like I'm ready to share this amazing offering to the world. I think I even wrote this in a journal, and it wasn't 3 days out from closing this 90-day raw journey that my older children's father passed away of a massive heart attack at 39 years old. And he was the one who inspired me, and we created that and cultivated that together for the 5 years that we were together. And in his passing, he was still eating mostly plant-based, but he had an extremely stressful life. Like when I met him, he was, on the trails, training in martial arts and hiking, and really just had a solid self-care practice along with the food. And that fell away in being, a parent of, at the time he was, raising his daughter, R2, his wife, and him had a son, and then she also had a daughter. So he was raising 5 kids when they were all in his house, and also working a really high stress job in the Tenderloin, San Francisco. And I really do believe that the lack of self-care and the stress took his life. And so I'm stepping out of being floating on the highest vibration with raw food and clarity into caring for his daughter and our 2 children and my youngest son on my own, and kind of just deviated from the raw food. But I found my way back every time. It put me right on a path of more clarity and continued self-care, ongoing self-care. And that's kind of where the holistic piece comes in, because it's really not just about the food. And that's actually what I find when I take people on the 21-day raw journey, is that we start out, everyone's hyper, we're all actually hyper obsessed about what are we eating, and what are we going to make next, and I feel hungry, I don't want to eat that, or this makes me feel this way, to realizing that I'm so busy, I don't have time to be in my kitchen to tend to myself. I don't have time for the Epsom salt bath. Yoga class, oh my gosh, where am I going to make space for that? Because many of the people that join my detox are mothers, some in partnership, some single mothers, and realizing that they don't have a self-care practice. So that becomes actually the bigger conversation, is how to make space for caring and loving for ourselves through that journey. It always ends up deviating from the food, although we still continue to, eat that way. It becomes this a bigger aha moment about our self-care and how much we give outside of ourselves before. And people always say, you can't, I don't know, all the sayings around, if you're empty, you cannot give anything to anyone, but many of us still continue to give everywhere else except ourselves. So that's where the holistic piece comes in. It's we have to create a practice that really nourishes ourselves with food and all the other components. Yeah.
I mean, and I love that, because, holistic shine, when I was looking at the website, I realized, I myself have been on a mostly vegan, plant-based diet for about 12 years now. Yeah. And like yourself, I guess towards the last, I think the 11th year, I deviated, had a little bit of eggs, then moved to Hawaii, had some fish, but have mostly maintained. Right now, I'm a plant-based person again, and I find myself in that space again. But what I found on my journey, and I'm curious about your journey too, you really spoke to that a holistic lifestyle isn't just about food, it's about self-care. What have you found is like a good self-care formula, besides just eating food? What I know it's going to be different for everyone listening, but for those people who are well, if I wanted to have a holistic lifestyle, what are the different components I could consider to kind of get there?
Yeah. Well, so actually, yeah, again, so much emphasis on the food. And then I came across this book called The Woman Who Glows in the Dark, by Elena Avia. And she was a psychiatric nurse who started to kind of dive back into her lineage and her ancestral life ways of curanderism. And she, started visiting Mexico and working with various healers and learning different ways, and kind of left her psychiatric nursing and came into this offering her services in a different way. And one of the things she shares very early on in the book, I think it's around page 30, and I kind of got stuck on that page for a very long time, because she shares this Aztec wisdom, which they call the Aztec formula for balance and equilibrium, to become kind of in harmony with the universe. And they break it down into 4 percentages: 52%, 26%, 13%, and 9%. And the way that she shared it, I'm not exactly sure like what parts and pieces she kind of wove in her own understanding of this equilibrium, but she broke it down as 52% is self, 26% is family, 13% is community, and 9% is the planet. So I started looking at self, all these movements, say the Black Panthers, for example. And I think, there was such a huge passion for community and for like kind of the world, the global perspective. But what was lacking was self-care. Huge. I know when the Panthers were just like having their meetings and just going for it, the self-care piece was a huge missing part. And as well as tending to family, like there were families that were potentially falling apart amongst even Panther leaders, because they were giving so much to the community, which is amazing. And there's so many movements like that. But then you kind of have to look like, well, where is my self-care piece? Like, how am I healing my own personal trauma through this whole journey? And is my family intact? And am I making enough time for family before I get out on the front line on behalf of the community? So I've looked at other movements and said, oh, that might have been what was missing. And I've seen workshops, herbal, like nourishment for trauma for activists, because it's like, yes, we have to stop and pause and tend to self. And it's not selfish. Many people think this self-care is selfish, but it's actually the only way, I feel like, to be truly successful in any endeavor is to make sure to give to self. Another way that she breaks down this formula, the Aztec formula, is that for self-care, which I always thought food is like kind of the most important. It fuels us. We have to eat every day. But 52% is breath. So a proper respiration, breath. How are we breathing? Are we taking in deep breaths? Whether you have a meditation practice or, a yoga practice that allows you to become really mindful with your breath, or whether you're getting out and walking in nature and taking in big, long, deep breaths. I know that during this pandemic, with all the mask wearing and the kind of phobia of being exposed to the virus and germs, I know I'm holding my breath a lot when I'm out, especially when I'm in the grocery store. I'm really aware, and almost to the point where I'm just like, hyperventilating under this mask because I'm not feeling like allowing my lungs to even expand. I'm being really protective. So the breath is 52%. That's like more than half of our well-being comes from proper breathing. And then also 26% is rest. So you could eat the most awesome plant-based diet, but if you're not breathing properly and getting enough sleep, you're going to start deteriorating and not be able to be your optimal vital self. And then comes, 13% hydration. So are you drinking enough water? you know, and I personally would include, you know, herbal teas in there, or tea with lemon and ginger and all of that as well. But breath, rest, hydration, and then the food, and then nourishment is 9%. So I actually start to try to think of my wellness in terms of that now. Yes, the food is so important and key, and now it's become such a daily practice for me to eat and make mindful choices around food. But then I have to also look at, you know, am I breathing? And am I doing practices that promote like deep breathing and mindful breathing, as well as rest, getting enough rest, and properly hydrating myself. And then what am I eating? So that's what I would say. Starting with the breath. Like, we can jump all the way to the food, but really, if you eat first, we got to cover, are we sleeping enough? You know, are we drinking enough water? And are we breathing? Yeah. So.
Wow. I really love, I want to read this book.
Yes.
And I need to read this book, actually.
Yes.
And I feel like just bringing that indigenous perspective in these times where people are kind of like, I know myself, sometimes we're looking outside of ourselves for information that feels authentic.
Yeah.
Everything you described is something that is really not technical.
No.
Not at the heart of it. I mean, of course, we could figure out kind of different breath teachers that can teach you how to breathe with certain breath techniques, the best, you know, researching the best type of beds to buy, the best type of ways to lie down and sleep, and again with the food.
Yeah.
But everything that you're describing is something that is within us, within our control.
Oh,
In a time where we feel like there's not certainty, there's not control. Something that we can control is the amount of self-care and healing that we give ourselves in this time.
Yeah. And the rest, even, you know, the breath piece, that could be just, you know, sitting in your space and having 5 minutes to just be aware of your breath, and hopefully more than that. You know, having a meditation practice, which I admit I completely do not have a meditation. I prefer the walking meditation, the one that happens in the forest, or the mindfulness that I bring when I practice yoga. That works better for me than sitting completely still. So I'm admitting that right now, even though many people have tried to guide me on that path. I'm like, that's not working for me. But also, yeah, the rest piece is just like, yeah, step away from your phone before you go to bed, and maybe start bringing in practices of maybe having tea and lighting an incense, or taking an Epsom salt bath, just kind of start preparing your body to go into a restful state. Yeah, and again, the water piece, I had to remind myself a few days ago, like, I really need to be drinking. There's so many recommendations about how much water we should be drinking, but half our weight in ounces is one of the ones I've kind of stuck to. So I definitely need to be drinking a lot more water. I don't match that. But I will say, if you're eating more plant-based foods and raw food, that those are water rich. So I find when I'm doing 100% raw, which I don't maintain on a daily basis, I definitely don't feel like I don't need as much water, because the water is in the food. It's when we're eating a lot of cooked food and dry things that where our body really is craving and needing water. Yeah.